So one last thing that I want to show you is we looked at the upcoming, but I want to show you this this blog here as well. Hold on, let me pull it out of here, and we'll put it into our browser, because this talks about some of the stuff that's up and coming with TypeScript. And so this right here, TypeScript 09, and what they're trying to do with generics and overloading is pretty interesting. And so the idea here is that, you know, with JavaScript, like I said, it's dynamically typed. So right here, you know, you can do some generic stuff already, like this .map method that comes, which is out of the box JavaScript arrays. You can run that on, you know, a bunch of different types of arrays. In this case, he's running on an array of strings. But so this map function right here is in fact a quote-unquote generic function because it runs on any array of any type. And so you know, generics are kind of already there, but the nice thing is that you know, down here I can actually use kind of the C#, if you will, syntax for creating generic types, and again, it just makes it a little bit more straightforward for a C# developer in order to do these types of things. So knockout.js is a huge, you know, a huge JavaScript library out there to do binding as well. So it's kind of the same thing that I was doing with Kendo. But if you notice here, I can use, you know, knockout, and I can do an observable of type T, and then that way I can basically create these generic functions that run on, you know, any type that you give me, and I can create generic interfaces and generic classes that I can then use to, you know, manipulate different types of objects. So that's something that's coming in 9.0. Overloaded constants. So this gets into, you know, right here I'm doing a create element. I'm getting the canvas, and then I'm saying get context, right? So the interesting thing here, and where this is kind of powerful, is down here. So notice up here I had to say get context 2D. Down here what I can do is I can actually use this tag name and just pull things in automatically without having to go back to the document object in order to pull those in. So again, just some helpers that help do things. And the add event listeners, those you know, again, work well with this new event. So here, the cool thing with TypeScript as well is it introduces this concept of lambdas, or I call it the lambda notation, and that's the way you can pass in functions. In JavaScript, you're passing around functions constantly. So this particular notation here allows you to say, I'm going to pass in a function and use basically C# notation in order for doing that. So it makes it a little bit easier for you to do that as well. And then there's a couple others. So there's a lot of things going on with 9.0. Notice they announced 8.3 about a month ago. So you know, 9 should be coming out here pretty soon, I would think. This was 24 days ago that they were already starting to work on some of these 9.0 features. So those are coming out. And then one last thing that I wanted to show you too that we didn't really get into is, so if we look at the code here and we go back to our .ts thing. So when we're doing this declare of Kendo and this $, there's really no IntelliSense that's coming in with this. Even though we're declaring Kendo, we're basically saying we know what Kendo is, so compiler ignore anything that's Kendo dot is basically what we're telling it. And the same thing here, we're saying, okay, we know that the $ is a Java or jQuery extension, so anything that's, you know, $ dot, just ignore that. As far as the compiler, we know what that is basically what we're saying. But if we wanted IntelliSense, then we actually have to create what's called a TypeScript declaration for those. And if you go out to GitHub and you look up this definitely typed project here, you'll notice there's this open source project where basically they've already created these TypeScript definitions for all of these different TypeScript or JavaScript libraries that are out there. So Angular is a popular one. Backbone's a popular one. So if we look at these, basically they come along with this .d, .ts, and so you take that that .d.ts file and you would add it to the top of your reference right here, just like that. Now all of a sudden you have all the IntelliSense, everything you need for that JavaScript library. Now you have that inside your editor here for doing JavaScript development. And so there's tons. Obviously, I mean, if you look at the list, I don't know exactly how many there are, but there's tons of them out here. All the jQuery ones are out here. So if you want to get jQuery IntelliSense, you can do that. Of course, all of Knockout's out here. I know Kendo has theirs. There's Modernizer. There's pretty much anything you want. Node's out here. So there's a lot of these out there that you can, grab these definitions, import them, grab that file, include it in your project, and then link to it. And then all of a sudden now you have complete IntelliSense for that particular library. So I'm a little bit over, so I'm just going to go ahead and finish off here. Let me just pull up my slide real quick. Obviously, everyone here knows who I am, so you guys know how to get in touch with me. But if you're watching this online, please feel free to email me, Twitter, whatever it takes to get a hold of me, and we'll go from there. All right. Any questions before we turn off the video? Any questions here? Yes, Mike.
I'm just curious. Say you come onto a project that already has an existing JavaScript code base, but you want to use TypeScript. Is there a transpiler that will take JavaScript and convert it to TypeScript for you?
Yeah, so the question is if I come onto a project that already has extensive JavaScript libraries out there, how can I incorporate TypeScript? And the answer is that you don't necessarily have to. I mean, you could just use your type. If you wanted to create a new JavaScript module, you could just start using the TS file. Nobody would really know any different because the JS file is right there next to it, so it doesn't really matter. But the other thing that I mentioned earlier is that TypeScript is JavaScript. So if I wanted to, I could create a .ts file for all my .js files and just copy that .js directly into the .ts file, and then I'd be ready to go. I wouldn't even have to change any of the as long as I did it in the same folder that I had my JS files in previously. I wouldn't even have to change any of the links on my project. It would all just magically work. Yes.
Can I follow up with a question?
Yes.
So say you want to use a library that's written in JavaScript, not in TypeScript, but you want to get the benefit of the type checking. Does that JavaScript have to be converted to TypeScript before you can do that?
Right, it has to have that, and that's kind of what I showed there at the end. So the question is what if there's a JavaScript library out there that I want to use, but I want to take advantage of, the IntelliSense and all the types that are in that particular library. And the only way you can do that now is you have to use those .d files. So if I go back to here, and I wonder if I can just open one of these up so that you guys can see my jQuery form. Yeah, so I'll just open it up real quick here. But see, notice what they've done in here is they've actually, so somebody out there in the open source community, whether it's somebody that's working on jQuery or whatever, they've gone in and already created the definition for your TypeScript in this particular case. So, my advice is if you're using a JavaScript library, that's open source or whatever, I'd do a search and see if there's any TypeScript definitions already defined for it. A lot of the popular ones already have these out there, and this is the most extensive list of or extensive compilation, if you will, of all the different ones that are out there. But I've seen others that are provided by vendors, especially if you look at some of the, like Kendo UI, it's a purchased library. So if you're a licensed user, then you get the .de automatically whenever you download the latest version of Kendo.
If it's a custom library, though, you got to make
if it's a custom library, if it's something that you have, your enterprise has built, then you're going to have to build your own .d file for it. And in that case, I don't even know if you'd want to build a .d. I mean, just convert it to TypeScript and put all that information in there, and then you can just reference the .ts file directly and have all that IntelliSense as well. So, good question. And those are the questions I get the most. And the answer really is that there's really no harm in using TypeScript in whatever you're doing now. It's not going to break anything. It is just JavaScript in the background. So, by all means, go out and play with it. Again, we had some issues with the plugin. It's kind of a beta version, but really, again, it's not going to hurt anything, so there's really no reason that you can't even play with the beta version, as far as I'm concerned. You know, if you run into problems and it's not working right, well, then just go back to JavaScript. You haven't really lost anything at that point. But I think you'll find that it helps you, especially if you're doing a lot of your data models client side in JavaScript. It helps tremendously. You know, but if you're just using normal ASP.NET MVC, where your models are created for you on the server, and you're just doing model binding with MVC, and then you know it may not be as critical that you use this. But if you're trying to do MVVM, and especially if you're using like Node on the background to pass JSON objects back and forth, then you know using TypeScript to create these models that you can quickly take your JSON, parse it into an object, and get static typing at that point. It saves you a lot of time and effort, you know, with maintenance and so on and so forth down the road. So, yes, another question.
So, if you wanted to do, do you know of any good existing TypeScript-based like testing frameworks? So, if I want to do test-driven development, for example.
Right. So the question is, are there any test-driven development frameworks out there for TypeScript? And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know. I haven't done any of that. But if we go back to the web here and we look, there is this jQuery form-tests.ts. Oh, sorry. Thank you. Yes, I'm showing on the main screen there. The new PowerPoint makes it a little bit goofy. Let's get back to it. There we go. Let me go back. So if you look at least in this particular, like on this GitHub one, if you look, there's also the jQuery form-test.ts file. And then if we look in here, you know, I'm not really sure what this is doing or how this is working. So I'm not sure. I mean, we could go, you know, we'd have to do some research as far as how these are working. But it sure looks like these are some tests that you could possibly use. But I'm not sure what framework or how they're implementing any of these. So that's a good question. But again, it's just JS on the back when you point it out. So you're right. I mean, you can write unit tests and test your JavaScript after the fact, but it'd be kind of hard to do test-driven development because you're trying to basically build your test by that JS file that if you haven't created it with the TS compilation yet, you're not going to have one to really test yet. So it's kind of a chicken before the egg if you're doing TDD. But I bet you if you did a search on it, you find somebody who's figured it out. Good question. Any other questions? All right, we'll stop the video and then we can discuss a little.